Yes, okay, we'd like to call the meeting to order, and if we could, by standing and saying the pledge. We would like to establish quorum and call our meeting to order.
Please say aye if you are here. President Don Wells.
Here.
Vice President Al Roper. Or Marilyn. Marilyn is. I'm just doing President. Second. Secretary Molly Knotts. I'm here. Treasurer Bill. Here. And Scott as a director, and Ron as a director. Please note that Marilyn is late. She's coming in from a meeting in Tallahassee and hopes to be here within the hour.
Okay, we'll call our meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda will be resident comment on agenda items.
The first speaker is Thomas Robertson.
I just wanted to say that I've been looking at these meeting agendas and they seem to stay the same every month. So my concern is how we're going to finally take these to completion. And I'm hoping now that we have a board which is equal 1/7, as mentioned at our last meeting, that we will hear from each board member on what they actually have done since the last meeting or arrived on the board, and that as something is moving forward, not necessarily completed, but moving toward a finished job.
Thank you. The meeting agendas are generally the same because we cover the same business each month, except for where you'll see the differences in old business and new business. And I think where you're looking for board members, each board member to update on their progress, I think that's where you'll see that in the old business or new business. And if you don't, that would just mean that that board member is still working on that. But eventually, again, if we take up new business, and for instance, Ron states he's going to do something, eventually it will come up back up as either old business or new business, and then Ron would update you, for instance. Thank you. Next speaker is Jim Swigert.
You have a new business, the Pine Island Gate construction funding. I should wait till you do it, but I can't talk then. You got to make sure Taylor Morrison, if at all possible, pays for what we have spent to date on that Pine Island construction. And Jerry, you know what it is. Please, they should pay for this, not us. Thank you.
I agree with you, and I believe the board does. We do have that on an agenda, and you will hear from the board a little bit later. Thank you.
Okay, there being no other resident comments, I would like to ask for a motion to approve the past minutes with any check changes or corrections that were deemed that we were all given to the board members.
Second. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, there being no corrections? Okay, we do have some corrections. Just a moment.
There were two corrections, one being the fact that Under Lake Subcommittee report, we said Chairman Scott DeFilippis. Actually, he spoke for Chairman Jim Niehaus, so Jim was not able to make that meeting. And under Architectural Design Review, it's Acting Chairperson Gail Taub.
With those corrections, we will then vote to approve the minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes will be approved as amended. The next item on the agenda is the board president's report. If you all would get your pocket watches out, I want this report to be less than 3 minutes. So here we go. Our board is approaching 2 weeks old, and we are diligently working to establish our identity. Our approach to topics is aimed at including all board members and additionally members of our talented community in discussions and decisions affecting us all. I am prepared for a few hiccups during the rollout, but I will emphasize that our intent is to do our very best for the entire community. In the past 2 weeks, the board has met with the attorney in Fort Myers in a 2-hour-long executive session during which we discussed ongoing litigation matters and how best to proceed. Unfortunately, this is an area that details must remain limited. I can assure you that all board members are involved and have participated in the briefing. 3 board members, along with our general manager, attended the Cape Coral Council meeting on Monday evening, where a public hearing was held on Ordinance 1019. By unanimous decision, we now own the plot of land north of Pine Island Gate, and Jerry will brief us on the chronology as to how it will proceed from here. We also met with Pope Management to introduce our new board members and to review our contract with them. This meet and greet included the owner, Keith Pope, and 2 of his vice presidents. The meeting turned out to be a revelation for both new and older board members. The services they were prepared to offer Sandoval under our current contract are extensive and far beyond what Sandoval has requested in the past. The proof of their ability to produce these extended services will be tested as we move forward. But I'm optimistic. Pope agreed to a town hall presentation for our community in the near future. I'm happy to report that our sign project has been completed with the digging of approximately 60 holes 3 feet deep and the placement and relocation of crosswalk, stop, and speed limit signs throughout the community. As an add-on to this project, which was initiated by our general manager, who purchased no tailgating signs for all ingress and egress points at our gates. This project cost was $6,620 plus the cost of the gate signs. This is in contrast to the $22,000 in expenses that were the results of the outside bidding process. An administrative matter of concern for all residents is the proposed increase of our purchase agreement from purchase assessment from $3,000 to $4,000. This budget item was tabled twice, and according to Robert's rules, it is no longer an item for discussion in the 2019 budget. Our budget was approved without this increase and will not be revisited during this budget year. All members of the board had input in tonight's agenda. It is a full agenda, so we will move into the details quickly. Without further ado, I conclude my remarks and yield the floor to our general manager for his report.
Well done. So I have a few updates. First of all, I can't go into this report without mentioning Gary Dobus, and we're really, really disappointed, me in particular, and I know you guys as well for different reasons. But tomorrow, wanted to give you a reminder from 4 to 5:30 in this room will be a little bit of a celebration for everything Gary has done for us and a farewell. And it's kind of a come and go, so you don't have to be here right at 4. So, you know, just feel free to come and stay for just a minute. And in a very unusual, I will accept a comment on Gary's farewell if you would like to give one.
Yes, I talked to Gary, and I always thought he got overtime because he was here all the time, and it's not true. So, that's probably a good sign. I would like to monetarily contribute to this man, and like pass the hat, something, have some money.
It's being done. It's being done. But if somebody in this room hasn't done it already, they still can do it.
if anyone, can you? Someone can get with him with the details of how he can contribute. One more second.
Well, Steve Larkin is collecting and Muggs Nixon is collecting.
Very good. Thank you. So again, 4 o'clock to 5:30 tomorrow. Feel free to come in whenever you have an opportunity. And as far as Gary's replacement, obviously, we hope to fill his shoes. It will be extremely difficult. So we're going to take our time and make the correct selection. For an interim period, Gary has done a great job setting up us to succeed in that transition period, and that he has detailed dates, times, procedures, policies. I mean, he has just really done a great job for us. So Pope Golf, the management company, is bringing in a person to oversee and to kind of guide lifestyle through that transition period. And coincidentally, his name is Gary as well. So anyway, so as soon as that person, I think their first day is actually tomorrow. So if any of you guys are around our Gary tomorrow, you'll probably see Pope's Gary as well. And then I'll do a formal introduction of him on a general manager update. And then I will also, in the general manager updates, keep you guys abreast to what's going on with the recruiting process. And another bit of good news is Mark Boyer is our new operations manager, and he begins on Monday. So what that does is basically I'm doing two jobs right now. I'm doing the operations manager job plus the GM job. And what that really means in a practical sense is I'm being able to keep critical operations afloat, and that's about all I can do right now on a daily basis. So when he comes in, then I'll be able to roll up my sleeves and do a little bit of initiative work. More specifically, the one I'm more excited about is the deed restriction enforcement and compliance. Mark will be focusing on project management. That'll probably be about 50% of his job, and then the other 50% will be a typical assistant GM type of position, helping me with AR, accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger, insurance, legal issues, all of those type of things. So I think that one of the things it's hamstringing me on is communication. And for those of you guys who've been at any of my meet and greets when I first started, you know how important communication is with me, and it's really disappointed me that I haven't been able to communicate better. But I'm telling you, I'm up to about 200 emails a day, and I have other responsibilities. So it's everything I can do just to get an email out to you telling you I'm sorry, but I'll have to get back with you. So that when Mark starts, that's going to lighten that up as well. So then things are going to kind of get to normal, and I think you'll start seeing it in probably 2 or 3 weeks when Mark gets accustomed to his job and we kind of get going. So, and I will also do a formal announcement and a GM report and introduction with Mark as well after he starts. And then last thing I wanted to say, I'm really happy with this first month as far as how the committee reports came in. The agenda was done 10 days in advance. The board pack, I think we were 6 days. We tried to get 7. I think this time we were 6 days just because of the tightness of our schedules. But I can see the first month how this is going to roll. And thank you to all the committee members for getting all your reports in on time. And so basically what that means is tonight when we give committee reports, you will be able to tomorrow or even tonight go onto the website, and the reports they're giving tonight will be already on the website. Pine Island Gate, just a very short update. I'm going to give a longer one, more lengthy one next week just because I have limited information. But I will tell you that when I gave that May 1st date, like hopefully anybody would do, I padded it a couple of weeks. So I was thinking realistically with the times that we set aside and everybody said that they could do their projects, we were probably looking around April 15th or 16th. So I said the May 1st date. Well, guess what happened? Our very first project was delayed 2 weeks. So now we're on that May 1st deadline, and we still have all of the work to do. So knock on wood, we don't have any more problems. But the problem was not related to any one particular contractor. Basically, it was the city permitting. And you'll see this in my update, but it's a little disappointing because our electrical contractor who does work in Cape Coral, I don't want to say exclusively, but most of his work is done here. He said it is extremely typical and unheard of for the city to require a permit. We were doing a conduit run on our property, and the city, it was SOP for them just to go and request a one call to get a utility locate. Well, when they did that, the city asked for a permit, and they're like, what? They couldn't believe it. And we used Maryland to try to give us a hand. We used a couple of other people, and they were just very stubborn. So that put us a couple of weeks behind. But it didn't. That didn't affect any of our bigger project, which was the permit that we did get based on the conveyance of the land for the construction work on the lane construction. That was not affected, and that's still on schedule to start next week. So hopefully we're still looking at that May 1, and I'll give a little bit more detailed update for those of you that like to follow that in more detail next week. Also, to what Don alluded, we put up signs at each gate, $500 for damage to the gate. We already have 2 strikes, and coincidentally, both strikes were from visitors. More specifically, one was a Bears furniture truck, and one was another contractor. So ultimately, I think all owners know this, ultimately the homeowner is responsible for their guests, whether they are a furniture deliverer, whether they are a plumber or whatever. However, that said, the first step we do is we send the notice to pay to the contractor, and we copy the owner, and we tell that contractor, if you don't pay it, we're going to have to go over your owner. And if that contractor doesn't pay it, the HOA must seek those funds from the owner, but we will also support the owner in then going back after the contractor to seek compensation for that. So that's kind of how that rolls out. And then lastly, for any of you who will be up and around tomorrow between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., all of the gates will be open. I don't want anybody to be alarmed, but apparently every year we have the annual garage sale, and that's to facilitate, obviously, folks coming in. So from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. tomorrow. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking today's Friday. But anyway, so that's Saturday. And that's all I've got, so thank you all very much.
Well, my first hiccup was that I stepped on the treasurer and asked for the general manager report, and I apologize and turned the floor over to the treasurer.
Okay, in the 2 weeks that we've been in office, I've met with Jerry once to go over accounts payable, and I'm happy to report that he has instituted a system of purchase orders so that he can pre-approve expenditures before they go out the door and before we get an invoice and we have to pay it. We were not doing that before, but he has started doing that, so that's a big plus on it. On our balance sheet in December, there was a new item for roughly $123,000 in construction in process. I hope to work to get a detail of what's in that so we can know exactly what that is. That number did not change in either January or February. I got the February financials just before we came in here. So that's been stable, so nothing else has been put in there, but I think we need to know exactly what that is. Our balance sheet does not have an inventory or an amount for either the fixed assets or the FF&E, fixtures, furnitures, and equipment that we own. Every chair that you're sitting in here should be listed on our balance sheet as a value, and it's not. So I think we need to get with our auditor and see that list is generated and we put it on there and recognize that value so that we know when something goes missing. One of the things we did see in the meeting with the attorney was that we are required to maintain all documents for 5 years with the HOA, and that's like, I'd like to see that we have an index of that so we know what it is and where it is, like 2018 general manager correspondence, 2018 general manager emails, 2016 general manager correspondence. I don't think we have that now, and I think we need to expand what we have so that if we need something, we can prove that we have it by statute because we're supposed to have it. The reserve study, what is the status of that? Has that started yet, or have we contracted with them?
Sorry, so they called, it was 2 days before the election, And so I told them that we weren't ready, we could not commit.
Okay.
And then they said that they're rescheduling for April.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think we need to follow up with the homeowners, what the status of it is, how long it's going to take, when we can expect a number, and when we can then look to see if we have adequate funding or if we need to adjust anything. So that should come up shortly. The 2018 audit is currently working. I know because we got an email from the auditor, and we're going to have a conference call in the morning at 10 a.m. With him of the current status of it, where it is, hopefully what a completion date is, any preliminary issues that he has, and I would encourage us to encourage him to come down both to make a presentation to the Finance Committee as to what his audit was and what any issues were, and to the board and to you as to how the audit was, so you know there was an audit, you know if there were any issues, and you know that we were clean or not. The last thing I had was the ARC committee. I think possibly we should be looking at privatizing that to get professionals in that, but that's just throwing that out. So I think in the future we should discuss that.
No, I think that's a great idea, and we will be discussing that further. There's an agenda item for committees.
Okay. And last thing was the February financials. I was hoping we would have a copy of that on everyone's seat tonight. We don't. Can we try to get a commitment that in March?
I would say that if they come in 2 hours before the meeting, I wouldn't be able to commit to that, but certainly if they come in at least 1 day before the meeting, we can include that with the agenda.
Okay. But can we commit that there'll be, the January financials went up yesterday, and so they're there for you to see on the website. Can we commit that these would get up fairly quickly too, even though they're in
So
draft?
what we received today was a draft set of the financials. I'll be going over to look at potential accruals that our GL might have missed, and maybe some reclassifications on that the GL may have missed, and then the process. And I'll encourage you to do the same.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about that in the morning.
Okay.
And we'll have probably a 2-day timeline to do that. Give them back to Pope, and then have them finalize. Then they'll email it back to us, and then they'll go onto the website.
So
Yes.
within a week, the
Yeah, I
homeowner
think that's
should be able
reasonable.
to see.
So
Sure.
does this mean that we need to consider rescheduling our board meeting to the fourth week of the month instead of the third, so that this becomes a reality?
I think we probably should have a discussion, and also the day, because I know one of the board members has a problem with Thursdays. Is there a possibility of moving it to another day? I don't know what the status of that is.
So why don't we discuss schedules in the coming days, and then I'll put something together, and then I'll make an announcement to the public, and then we'll vote next meeting on that amended schedule.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm in favor of that.
Okay.
I do think we need to have the financials present at the meeting for the month before,
Yeah.
consistently.
And that's all I have for you.
Okay, we're going to move on to committee reports. The Amenities Committee. Rob Purcell. Did you receive a report?
So no, there was no report given, and Rob is absent tonight, so we can go on to the next report.
The ARC report. Gail Taub.
Members of the, am I on? Yeah, oh, okay. Members of the board and community. The members of the Architectural Committee welcome the new board members and look forward to working together for the betterment of Sandoval. The ARC Committee continues to meet on a weekly basis on Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. We are continuing to review applications in a timely manner, and approvals and denial emails are sent to homeowners within 3 days after our meeting. Some applications are tabled due to insufficient information, and homeowners are contacted requesting additional paperwork. These applications are then reviewed at the next meeting. I have been continuing to work with the Communications Committee with the new DR guidelines, and they've been put up on the Live Sandoval website. And we encourage homeowners to read through it to familiarize themselves with what is and is not permitted. If homeowners have any questions regarding any projects they are contemplating, please feel free to contact us at sandovalarcreview@gmail.com, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. At the last board meeting, a homeowner brought up the subject of the $25 non-refundable fee charged for each application. Many HOAs charge this fee, and it has, after talking to Jerry, we decided to just leave it for the time being, and we don't feel it's excessive or prohibits homeowners from making improvements to their properties. Kathy Chaplin has resigned from the ARC, and we want to thank her for her contribution to the committee. We would also like to add, although I don't know if we'll be doing this, looking for 3 people to add to our committee. A construction background is preferable. If interested, please fill out the form that Jerry has put online and send it to him, I believe, by April 11th.
Correct.
All right, and we're looking forward to working with the community.
Thank you, Gail. Does anyone have any questions for the ARC committee? Okay, the Communications Committee report.
Good evening. The Communications Committee is moving along. Things are, is this working? Am I all set here? I think I should. I got to push a button. There we go. Thank you. Good evening. The Communications Committee continues to move along. We had our 3rd formal meeting of the year on February 26th here in the clubhouse. Minutes from that meeting are on file and can be accessed on the new, on the Live Sandoval website. Work continues on the website revision project with a focus on posting the ARC documents that Gail just referred to. Also updating a lot of board information and adopting, we want to add key maintenance contracts to the site, and we're working with Jerry to get those posted in due course. In addition to that, our work with the board, GM Communications support in the background, helping them with communications they want to do, continued through the election season with several releases prepared and edited. And we've also developed new templates for the different communications from the board and from Jerry and from the committees that you're starting to see in the email blasts that we're sending out. Ongoing work includes the summary of the March board organizational meeting and work on the committee volunteer appeal. From the time frame of March 1st to March 21st, the last 3 weeks, we have worked on 13 different pieces of information to better inform the community. So we're pleased with the progress we're making there. And we're also pleased with the interplay between the committee. The committee has expertise and skills in certain areas, and the willingness of the board and the GM to use our services and take advantage of what we're trying to offer. So that is working very well. My next item is that the audio-visual quality of the board meetings we continue to work on. Vic Neufeld, sitting over there next to the cameras, is also running a soundboard to get the audio quality as high level as we can get it. We recently announced, I think it was yesterday, we announced that we have replaced Channel 1 with something called the Sandoval Video Box. And if you go to YouTube and search for Sandoval Video Box and then subscribe, all of our meetings hopefully will be live streamed on that channel. And we'll have a nice repository so that you can go back and look at any given meeting anytime you need to do so. You can either watch it live or you can watch it at your particular, whenever it makes sense for you to do so. Vic is also working on a proposal to do some improvements with the current audio coming from the board as they have their meetings, and I'm not sure if that's going to make the agenda tonight or not, but there is a proposal.
It's on the agenda.
Okay, great. My shout out to Vic for really putting in a lot of terrific effort here. And we would really like to, those of you, there's going to be some nerd in this room who was on the audio-visual squad back in high school. Vic needs some people to help out with what he's trying to do because he's not going to be physically able to attend every meeting of that we need to cover. So we need to recruit one or two other people who are willing to give Vic a hand. So keep that in mind. And if you were one of those nerds, or even if you wish you were one of those nerds who never quite made the audiovisual squad, here's your chance. Ken Franklin and I are continue to work on developing a prototype for a monthly newsletter. That would be something that would fill in between the Facebook pages and the longer-term postings that we have on the website that could tell some human interest stories and some other less timely kinds of stories about happenings in Sandoval. We have a number of people who are interested in helping us with that. The big hang-up for us and what's taking so long is that we really don't have software to do it effectively. The Club Essentials software that we have here in Sandoval is a very awkward device to use to try to produce communications. So we're working hard on that, and we hope that that will come to fruition soon. I believe that's all I have for now, and I appreciate all your support. And let me reemphasize, Jerry is looking for volunteers. We're looking for volunteers. Please step forward.
Thank you, Doug. Yes.
I just tested you while you were talking, and we are streaming live, so you're good.
All right, great. He's good.
All right. Okay, there's no report from the Covenants Committee. Finance Committee. No report, okay. Grounds Committee. Allison Johnson.
Hello? Oh. One of our first order of business is to acknowledge and thank Ernie Giordano. He's the past landscape chairperson for all of his time and efforts. He gave so tirelessly. A lot of people don't realize how many hours that he gave freely. It's not a paid position. I worked with him since 2012, and I just wanted to make sure that we all give Ernie a great big shout out and a thank you when you see him. Thank you. Your interim chairperson was instated on Saturday, March 9th at a special BOD meeting where Ernie Giordano's resignation was also accepted. This month, Crawford has been concentrating on weeding beds and doing some shrub trimming, as well as replacing some sod along the esplanades and on some berms. Crawford also installed pine straw mulch around the new clusia shrubs that are in the entire perimeter around Sandoval, as well as the perimeter of the Calypso Park. Palm City replaced 2 royal palms in Phase 3 that were under warranty, and a broken irrigation main line along the fence line at Maryville Court was attended to. Did several ride-alongs, all-day ride-alongs with both companies, and plans are laid out for moving forward. Some high-priority issues that we are currently addressing because of those ride-alongs. The conditions of the turf in a lot of areas, issues were identified and solutions are now in the works. Fertilization of shrubs was noted, and also some irrigation changes in some of those shrub beds were noted, and those are being addressed. Pruning techniques were discussed and noted, and they're making a few changes there as well. They started that already today. Many shrub beds will be having warranty-covered replacements added back into them by early April. Crawford will now be using colored dye in their sprays, in their weed spray, to identify the exact location of the spray's coverage. Weeds within a shrub's canopy range will be hand pulled so that we're not getting any of the spray on any of the shrub's leaves. Irrigation feeds to the nucleus, the entire perimeter of Sandoval will be fixed under warranty by Crawford. So that's what I have. I'm all about that warranty. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you for stepping up. I think you've had a full-time job since you assumed this acting responsibility. Okay, the Lakes Subcommittee report.
Good evening.
Jim Niehaus.
Thank you. Good evening. Just a couple updates. I know, Jerry, I thank you for getting out the guidelines, you know, kind of setting the schedule and the expectations with the group. I think it's always helpful to have that type of structure. I know you want me to keep this to 5 minutes. I did read all the way down on your spreadsheet there, but I'll try to move as quickly as we can. We did meet earlier this month. You know, 4 of the 5 members were present, and Al joined us, Al Roper. We mainly focused on educational topics and consolidating a list of references, resources, and so the majority of the subjects are specific to terrestrial practices, things that can negatively affect the lake's health if they're not carefully followed, and we do look forward to working closely with Allison, you know, on things, and I was really pleased to hear about the dye being used in the weed killer and the hand pulling, because there are ways we can go about things that can have less of an impact. So I look forward to learning more. But that reference library is set up, and as you go into the report, the link's there, so everybody would have access to that. But we'll work with the communications committee, the board liaison, as well as the GM as we prepare each educational piece for release. And I was pleased to hear about the quarterly newsletter. You know, the communications group is developing, so we'll look to be involved in that process too. Some may be on demand, and Jerry, just to know the past, when Lee County comes out to do the mosquito spraying in our community, they do call me. I'm kind of the point guy, and I would send a note. I only get notified like 2 in the afternoon of the day that they intend to come out, with weather permitting. So there are some. I just think it's a good courtesy to let people know when the fog trucks are coming through our community. I mean, they're doing a pretty massive, widespread application of pesticides, and you really don't want to be out there. Trust me. You know, you can read all about it on their website and get into the details of the product. But there are times where they're going to fly planes through here, and they're going to drop. You know, they're going to pretty much bomb the place. So it's good if we can alert residents to that, and you kind of know to seek, not just seek shelter, but stay inside. Anyway, moving on. So with the aeration, you know, so I'm certainly pleased to hear we're really getting to that point, and but I think it's important to kind of set some expectations of you know, and that's through education, you know, with people. It's in understanding why are we at this point, and this is not a natural setting. We've done things with the plants, you know, other practices to try to create a natural environment to mimic it, but the constant impacts from our basically things that we do in our yards, that everything ends up in our lakes. So there's a toll that takes over a short period of time in an urban setting, and it's also important to understand that the zone, the geological zone that we're in the soils, that they do have high nitrogen and phosphorus content, and so that already sets the base for problems independent of all the other things that we do. And we're hoping to get to the point of having a meeting with the aquatic systems group to just discuss understand the implementation, you know, the possible implications when we turn these things on, because, you know, as we agitate those nutrients at the bottom with this aeration, we're going to stir some stuff up. And we don't know how it's going to respond, but we're hoping that some level of testing can be done to look at the muck and the sediment. And it may help us even predict, you know, how a lake is going to, you know, what the potential is for a flare-up. And I included in my report some, you know, aerial photos of the lake in Somerville when we first put those aeration systems in 2007. They were put in the first quarter, and then by the fourth quarter, that lake was completely green. I mean, it flared up bad. Construction was still underway within the condominiums, so it was early on in that whole area's existence. So I think there we're looking at more of a geological effect of the background nutrients that were there in the soils, more so than we are the nutrient runoff that could be the result of fertilizer, since it was such a short period of time. So every lake's different. Every lake has its own personality, and so we hope as this rolls out, we can kind of have the expectations set, and part of that is through the education, we want to offset the impacts at some point. We don't want to continue to just think, okay, it's okay to have the green lawns, because the more green our lawn is, the more green our pond is, and fertilizer, it is the enemy of water quality, and it's proven. I mean, we had one of the worst years in history in this part of the world. I mean, it's looking so much better out there now, and we want to be part of that turn. So aeration is the backbone of a long-term management plan, and our hope is to really maximize the effectiveness and the investment as well, by doing better practices of preventing nutrients from getting in the water. There's a list of things here, and I'll just touch on them, but that would include the annual beneficial shoreline plant replenishment. One thing I'll report, I did water sampling yesterday on a lake, and I noticed a good rebound on one of our lake of littorals, Scott's lake that you're on. But we want to see this trend consistently through the community. If we have a lake that's not responding, the littorals aren't bouncing back because it's a seasonal brownout that they have in the cooler months, and they should be on their way back, then it is possible that some of the past practices of these repeated chemical treatments have contaminated the soil, and we've got a heavy copper content in there, and it's not a good growing environment. So we've seen deterioration of these plants. This is the critical buffer between us and the life that exists in our lakes, and we can really lessen the impacts by having the marsh filters fully in place. We know restoration is going to be a project for us to restore those lake banks, and and hopefully it'll reduce the amount of runoff of the nutrients that are coming from the soils. It is a corrective action that's necessary, but it's going to disturb those planted areas. One of the concerns is it should not preclude us continued maintenance of having an adequate density of those plants, because if we have established plants in place and we come in and we disturb those banks, at least we can do transplanting rather quickly versus starting from scratch. And having an active aeration system in a lake, it's going to help dissipate anything that gets stirred up during that lake bank restoration. We want to get the controls, and this is part of what I was hearing from Allison today over our large contracted vendors to ensure they're doing best management practices with all their applications of chemicals, and including irrigation system maintenance as well as lake bank trimming. One of the things that I added here is this came from our environmental resource permit, and it's under the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, in which we are the operating entity of. But commercial applicators of chemical lawn products must register with the Homeowners Association annually and provide a copy of their current occupational license, proof of business liability insurance, proof of compliance with applicable education and licensing requirements, and we should really be holding those standards. And another thing to consider too is avoiding the selection of high maintenance non-exotic plants, because if we're going to put in a plant that needs a lot of fertilizer and a lot of pesticides, we're going to put a lot of that stuff ultimately into our lakes. So it's certainly something to consider. More Florida-friendly native type plants. The continued education of homeowners on how their individual terrestrial actions matter to our lakes in support of best management practices. There's a statement in our stormwater pollution prevention plan. Each homeowner must commit themselves to the practice of responsible and careful landscape design and maintenance of each lot to prevent contamination of surface water. The guidelines included in the section are intended to help homeowners make educated environmental choices regarding maintenance of individual yards within the community. These maintenance and management guidelines are meant to promote an attractive neighborhood that preserves the health of adjacent waterways and environmental features. This plan, there's a bit more detail here, but it definitely gets into a lot of what applies to construction companies, and that also provides to us as well. You know, I will point out, I didn't see the compliance with Taylor Morrison when they built here. It's unfortunate for us, you know, that they have really put us further down the timeline of the lake life cycle. But we need to be more diligent now as a result. I mean, what happened, but we need to be a little more proactive, and certainly in phase 3, I see some opportunities there to make some quick recovery. Food for thought. This was out of a guide here to sustainable pond, management. As with most things, it's crucial to strike a balance. When it comes to lake and pond management, it is ecologic. I'm sorry here, bear with me. It's been a long day on the water for me today. It is ecological balance that you want to strike. You need the right amount of beneficial plants in and around the water, the right water chemistry, the right nutrient management plan, the right control measures in place, all working in harmony in the right proportions at the right time intervals to achieve sustainable aquatic vitality, aesthetically appeal for your lake or pond. Quick update on the water management or the water quality monitoring programs, and then I'm here for questions. We did complete February sampling, and we've got a meeting coming up next week for a regional volunteer appreciation that's going to be up in West Rotunda, which I intend to attend. So, we did complete sampling yesterday. Things went very smoothly with 7 volunteers participating. So I've got both the February and March samples frozen in my freezer, which I'm going to be able to take up to West Rotunda next week and deliver to the regional coordinator. Then those go off. They're also going to hand us our packet that includes the all of the analysis that they've done from samples that we collected last year. The Lee County Pond Watch, we've got this moving forward. Thank you, Steve Putnam, for coordinating that with Ernesto Lasso de la Vega. He's going to be here on the 1st. We're pretty excited. This is also meeting will include our vendor, Aquatic Systems. We'll have Lexus here. This is really what I feel to be a pinnacle of all this effort that we put in to date, and coming together of all minds here. So we look forward to that, and thank you, Doug and Victor, for making the arrangements to get that videotaped as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Jim. I have one question, and I'd like your feedback regarding a policy of feeding wildlife by residents of the community. Do we need a Sandoval policy statement on that, and what is your recommendation?
Yes, we do need that. I mean, people mean well, they want to help, but those aren't the kind of things that really help animals in the end. They mislead them and misguide them. We do have some clauses. I meant to look at this in advance of the meeting about raising livestock in our community, and I think it's something we want to build off, because basically if you're feeding a bunch of ducks and you're keeping them at your place, you're raising livestock. I mean, at least in my mind, I think that's a practice that we don't want to ever have here. There needs to be a policy done, and so in this library, this reference library we set up, I did pull some articles in there that really will help us build a strong message, but I think it needs to go a step further. Can the Lakes Committee
prepare a policy for us for the next meeting?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, and then I would like to mention that there's a big meeting on April the 1st that Steve Putnam has been giving us information about. And would Steve, at this point, it's dealing with lakes. Would you like to stand up and take the mic and explain that to the residents and encourage their attendance?
Thank you, Jim and Don.
The meeting on the 1st is going to be a broad understanding of the pond system that we have. It's going to be initiated by our work with Lee County Pond Watch and Ernesto de la Vega, renowned across the state of Florida in retention pond management. And at the end of the day, we call them lakes. It is a retention pond system. We're going to explain that to everybody. And we want to talk to the community about how the system works, what its needs are, and then we are going to open it up. We'll have, as I said, Jim, Ernesto will be with us, Alexis Pelfrey from Aquatic Systems, and Allison has agreed to be part of it because we all understand that the lakes and the grounds are intimately associated. So Allison will be part of that, and we just want to answer as many questions as you all have about our system and what you can do to help us maintain that.
That's April the 1st?
April the 1st at
Right
7
at this
p.m. right here.
clubhouse at 7 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don.
Okay, we'll now move into the business section of our meeting. They're not here.
The first item on the agenda is regarding Standing Lakes Committee. Board President Don Wells requested this matter to be placed on the agenda. As most board members are aware, the Lakes Subcommittee is currently under the leadership of the Grounds Committee. Don will lead a discussion on the merits of separating the two committees and authorizing a Standing Lakes Committee.
I see assets of our community. There are several, but two of the biggest are our grounds and our lakes, and for that to be put together under one head, I think it's not what we really should be thinking about. I'm encouraging separating them and making a formal Lakes Committee. In addition, keeping the Grounds Committee, and of course there'll be coordination between the two, but I would like some discussion from the board and a motion if you agree with me.
I will make a motion to separate the Lakes Committee as a subcommittee of the Grounds and to make it its own committee standing on its own legs.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
I'd just like to chime in a bit on this. As a former, well, I don't know if I'm still a member of the Lakes Committee or not now that I have this position, but have been on the Lakes Committee since its inception with Jim Niehaus and Steve Putnam and everyone. We used to be a full standing committee, and we were demoted, and I'd like to thank our president for moving ahead forward with this, because I know this was of concern to a lot of people that things weren't happening that should be happening, and now we are going to move forward. This is a super positive thing for the community that we now have the Lakes Committee back to a standing committee, that they can fully do the job that they're expected to do with the guidance of Jim Niehaus as chairman. So again, I'd like to thank you, Don, very much for taking that initiative.
Any other discussion?
Call.
Then I would like to call a vote on the motion that's on the table. Do we want to read the motion?
Do you want me to read it, or do you want to read it? Yeah. The motion was to separate the Lakes Committee and make it a standing alone committee, separate it from as a subcommittee from the Grounds Committee.
All right, let's have a vote. All those in favor, raise your hand by saying aye. And aye. Okay, opposed? The motion carries, and we will now have a separate Lakes Committee and a separate Grounds Committee.
Next order of business is committee charters, solicitations for chairs and members. So what I'm going to read you is what I prepared a week ago, and it's changed a little bit, and then after I read it, I'll tell you how it's changed. On March 15th, I sent out a general manager report to the community, providing information on all of our standing committees, as well as a solicitation for committee chairpersons and members. On Wednesday, March 20th, yesterday, residents had a deadline to submit interest in becoming a committee chairperson. On Thursday, March 21, today, I will be making a recommendation to the board for committee chairperson appointments. The board will then vote on the appointments of chairpersons. On Wednesday, April 3rd, residents have a deadline to submit interest in becoming a committee member. On Thursday, April 18th, which is our next board meeting, I will provide the board committee charter amendments for consideration. And then at that same meeting, on Thursday, April 18th, committee chairpersons will be making a recommendation to the board for members. So what has happened is I'll be sending out an announcement, hopefully tomorrow, Monday at the latest, that we didn't get quite the response. We had enough to operate, but I think that through quick conversations with some board members, the consensus was overwhelming for us just to hold back a little bit, get a little bit more volunteerism to be able to fill up these committees. So I'm going to look for Don for action on this agenda item.
I would implore the community and all of the board members here to encourage the community to participate with our committees. I think the members that ran recently ran on wanting committees, and if they want committees, we've got to have your participation. And so I implore the community to step up to the plate and volunteer so that we can have a vivacious community and vivacious committees. And we're giving you a little extra time to reconsider and submit your applications for chairpersons as well as for membership on the committees.
And before action is taken on that, I would like to say that we will continue to operate all of our committees as is until a selection is made on the new chairpersons and members.
Habitually over the past 2.5 years when we've had committees, we've staffed them, but we've staffed them at a certain number, and simply attrition, illness, family matters have come in where members have had to drop out. And we need more members for committees because those things are going to happen. They're going to continue to happen. You may be healthy today and out there, say, with Allison and working in the sunshine and doing inspections. And next month you may come down with pneumonia and you're not going to be able to do it, or you have to have back surgery, or all sorts of things. So it happens. We've seen it happen. Please, please volunteer.
Any other discussion? I would like to, at this time, entertain the discussion that Bill Tubb mentioned in his report regarding the ARC. And since you brought the subject up, I'll give you the floor.
Well, my thinking was with residents staffing that committee, they have pressure put on them by neighbors, friends. So I'm not saying there's ever been any impropriety, but there's pressure that they don't necessarily need to have to endure. If we were to privatize it and put paid consultants providing that service for us, that would put it out of the realm of somebody thinking it wasn't done fairly and evenly always. And that's just where I was coming from, that would give us a more professional response to all inquiries.
So our governing documents do allow us, in fact, they allow us to charge for applications, and I think the intent and the foresight on there is in the need of professional services. So it's been my experience through working with other companies over the years, other communities over the years, that I have used those type of professionals, and usually they're architectural firms, and they might put, depending on the application that comes through, if you're working for a development company and it's new homes, well, the fees are obviously higher. But if you're looking to put in a basketball goal or a flower bed or whatnot, well, it's very, very inexpensive. And those applications would go to the lower level employees. So the actual way that they would do it is we would give them a copy of our governing documents, and they use Google Earth, and also on-site visits as needed. And so I definitely believe that within the next week or two, I can identify someone in Southwest Florida to be able to help us in that regard, and at least have enough information to bring to the board to consider.
Well, Gail talked like we're getting pretty good timely responses from the current board. if we were to privatize, can we expect the same time?
Yes, and in fact, in my experience, I've had, this committee has been awesome, but not every homeowners association responds as well as ours. So I would say historically, these firms have been better than the communities as far as their response. It's in a contract. So, and also as far as the fees structure, it would be tiered. And, you know, I've had actually firms have a cafeteria list of 30 items. You know, basketball goal installation might be $25. A new house might be $500, whatever, you know. So the board can take a look at those details, and we can make a recommendation that way.
I guess the question that I would have is, while conceptually I would agree with that, what I maybe would ask Jerry also is, we're incurring a fee to do something that is already done by a volunteer organization. So my question would be, your operations manager, would that be part of a job description that he would take over, or is that going to encumber him too much in the job that he's already outlined to have?
I believe it would mean additional staff, and you know, 10 hours, 15 hours, or Gail probably puts in 30 hours right now, so she could attest that, or more. So yeah, it's a full-time job.
So what I think we as a board need more information on is if you could bring forward to us next month what it would cost us, how we could pay for those services. Right now, the $25 fee that we are charging goes into our general fund, but that could conceivably be put towards payment of an outside source. Am I correct?
So it would be a pass-through cost. For the cost of the architect to review the application would be on the homeowner applying.
Then I think if the board would recommend that Jerry give us more information about this so that we could then put that on the agenda and discuss at the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion for that, do we? No. Yeah. Yes.
So a motion to postpone discussion of the committee appointments until next meeting, in which that will be to discuss both the chairs that would be recommended as well as membership.
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, we will postpone the item on committee charters, solicitations for chairs and members until next meeting.
Next order of business is the establishment of ad hoc committees. Board President Don Wells requested this matter be placed on the agenda. As most board members are aware, there are currently 4 major projects the Board of Directors are either considering or which are in various stages of progress. Don will lead a discussion on the merits of assigning board members as members of an ad hoc committee overseeing these projects through completion. The following major projects will be considered for ad hoc committee oversight: Sunshade, Clubhouse expansion, Taylor Morrison, and capital improvement projects.
Just as a way of explanation, committees of an organization, you have standing committees, and the committees where the chairmen have stood up in front of us and given us a report, it's a standing committee. We also have the option of creating special committees, and a special committee is a committee that is formed for a specific purpose, and its existence lasts until that purpose has been completed and the committee is no longer needed. And I think we have on our plate here in Sandoval several huge items that I think that we need more expertise than the board. And for that reason, I am proposing that we create a special committee composed of board members and residents to help determine the outcome of these projects. I will start first, and this requires a consensus of the board and would require a motion, but let me just explain, and then we can do the formalities as you all, see fit, concur or non-concur. The Taylor Morrison litigation is something that is paramount for all of us. We all have expectations. Whether those expectations are exactly as we each believe it is, or it's something different, I think is something that to be determined. And I think a panel of experts would be indicated for that. And I'm recommending that our board attorney, Ron Spooner, head that committee. with myself and Al Roper as board members on the committee, and I think Ron possibly has some residents that he would like to recommend, and the discussion of this committee I would like to turn over to Ron.
Well, what we contemplated was having the board members, at least 2, and likely 3 board members and 2 residents that will help and assist us in managing this litigation. An important component of this is where we have been previously to this board. And to date, Dave Hiller has been working with us to make sure we're up to speed. And another gentleman who's reached out to us, his name is David Graham. He is general counsel for Chico's. He's very experienced in managing litigation, and we have met several times, and they've all expressed an interest in continuing to work together. The point of having this committee will be to make sure that we protect confidentiality, because it's very important when we have ongoing negotiations going forward, and it will also protect our client privilege, attorney-client privilege. But the communication will be done through the members of the board only, with input from the TM litigation committee. So I would move for a ad hoc TM litigation committee comprised of 3 board members and 2 residents.
That is a motion that's on the table. Would there be a second to that motion? Any discussion?
Are the 2 board members the one that you have mentioned in your report? Or are we still soliciting 2 residents for that?
As long as they're willing, and it's my understanding they are. If not, we'll have to revisit the resident input then.
We have 3 board and 2 residents.
Correct.
A total of 5. Yeah. On this. Okay, second to the motion?
We have it.
And
Bill.
discussion we're having. Any other discussion?
I'd just like to put it out there that I am in favor of the Taylor Morrison Ad Hoc Committee. I do have a problem with one of the residents that were mentioned there. It's a personal thing for me. I mean, we're in a situation where we are, and I don't think we should be revisiting that with possibly the people who got us into that original position. So I will be voting no because of the appointees of the residents on that committee.
Well, I think that another thing for consideration, if there has been work done in the past, you need to know where you stand at this particular point, and I think it would be imperative to have that knowledge on the committee.
My opinion is that from a factual perspective, this has been ongoing now for close to 3 years, and so that, from that perspective, it's very, very important to have continued involvement.
Will this committee review the documents that have been provided to determine if they're adequate to proceed, or do we make recommendations that we need additional professionals to provide us reports that would be required for any hope of any successful litigation?
Absolutely. Part of this will be looking at this from a risk assessment and what type of value there is in proceeding. I'm personally looking very, very closely at all legal expenditures, and to make sure we separate them for the different matters, and to make sure that we maximize any value going forward.
I think it's also important to recognize that the membership of that committee will not be litigating the case. We are to protect Sandoval's interests so that we know what's going to be happening, and to guide it financially as well as materially on the case. Any other discussion? Then I would call a vote. All those in favor signify by raising their hand. All those opposed? Okay, so noted. The next committee that I would like to discuss, special committee, is the club expansion project. This is another area that we have a situation where we have a bids that are well in north of what we had expected them to be, and we need to know where to go from here. And again, imploring the community, those of us in the community that would have construction expertise and negotiation and initial groundwork on developing a project of this scope, to please fill out an application and give us an email so that we can select them to be on this committee. This is something that, you know, it's going to require something that has expertise at this stage. We need to get the project moved, and then once it is moving, we can certainly solicit other residents for, you know, some interior designs and things like that. But right now, this is something that we're building a 11,000 square foot project, or minus, depending on what our finances will allow us to do. And that's the type of individual I'm looking to volunteer to help the board move this project forward. Once this committee is formed and those members have been identified, we're then going to go to those who have prepared bids, who have been working on that, and find out where we stand on this project, because I don't think any of us know at this point. And the people that have volunteered for this are Molly Knotts, Marilyn Stout, and Ron Spooner. And the at-large residents, we need to have you, we're soliciting you to join us.
We need a motion to establish the committee.
So we need a motion to establish the committee. Do we have a second? Do we have discussion?
Call. You can call the vote.
Okay, with no discussion, can we move to approve the formation of a club expansion committee with those 3 board members being involved with the project? All in favor? Signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Okay, we now have 2 ad hoc special committees. We need a committee for sunshade, the sunshade on the playground. And this is an area that I solicit anyone with interest in children or whatever that would like to be involved in discussing and helping solve the problem of sunshade on the playground, to let us know through email. And I would encourage Bill Tubbs and Scott DeFilippis as to be the board members on that committee, if they concur. Yes. Okay, now can we have a motion to that effect?
I so move.
Is there a second? Is there discussion? There being no discussion, I close the discussion and move for a vote. All those in favor of forming a sunshade ad hoc committee with Bill Tubb and Scott DeFilippis as board members and community at large, we're waiting for a response.
Aye.
Okay. The next area is capital improvement projects, and this is an area that I think we've been needing. And what this is involving, and this is my scope, and anyone's certainly willing to add their input, is that we have several capital projects that some of them are safety related, some of them are absolute necessities, and some of them are like to have, and they all need to be categorized and alphabetized so that as to priority. And I think that, again, some community involvement would be important as well. And I think Al Roper would be a good person on that committee, and I'm soliciting anyone else that would be interested. Let me know.
I'll work with Al.
Okay, then Scott's going to work with you. And then I would like to ask for a motion and discussion.
I so move.
Okay, second? Discussion.
This is a really important phase of our commitment to the community, in that this group of people are going to be doing are figuring out what really is needed, the needs from the wants, from the, gee, that would be nice to haves, and prioritizing those and really doing in-depth study in this, because some of us think one thing is way more important than others, but you need to have a lot of input. One of the things that Pope offered to do for our community when we met with their officials this week was to do surveys. They do surveys at all of their communities. They have the means and the ability to do so. So I imagine very strongly that the Capital Improvements Projects Committee will be utilizing those surveys to help determine what is needed and wanted by the community members.
Any other discussion? Then I.
Would this committee be limited in what they could consider?
No.
So any,
No.
what, we want to have a remote control airplane. So if there were residents who wanted to have a remote control airplane landing field,
well,
they could consider
they're
open to the world.
You're going to have projects that are that you hear that people might like to have, but then they're going to be prioritized, and then you're going to compare that to the funding, and then you'll determine which ones you can do. And I think it's unrealistic to think you'll do every one in 1 year.
True. Okay.
The other thing I'd like to point out is all of these projects that you would bring to the board as a recommendation, and the full board would vote on them.
Right. All of our committees, and the purpose of establishing the committees is that they're going to be working on the project, and then each month they're going to come here and tell us where we stand. So and I know what's going on. And I think it's another mechanism to get people actually working on it rather than sitting here in a board meeting, the 7 of us, and then walk out the door, and then a month later come back in here and sit down, and then we don't know anything that's going on. I mean, this is the way you've got a working group that's actually working on the project. So. Now, do we vote? We didn't vote.
Yes, we have not voted yet.
Okay, so I then now ask the vote for Al Roper and Scott DeFilippis to be on the Capital Improvement Projects Committee, and again solicit homeowners that would like to have interest in this as well. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, and we'll establish a Capital Improvement Projects Ad Hoc Committee.
Before we move on, I just wanted to mention my interest in either creating an ad hoc committee or expanding the covenants committee to review our existing covenants and bylaws, and specifically any of the Taylor Morrison changes. How we go about this is obviously open for discussion, but at a minimum, I would like to add it to the covenants or create an ad hoc committee to address this.
Yeah, so I agree with Don. Don just mentions appropriate covenants, and I agree. I'll be working with the committee chairs on amending the charters, and we will include that responsibility in their charter to make a recommendation to the board.
Thank you.
The one other question I'm going to ask Jerry, and it affects you, Scott, and also Al, is the aeration. Where do we stand on that project?
We're waiting for the hire of the operations manager to get started on it. That will be his one of his first projects to hit the ground running with that project.
I'd like to see that move ahead. We've voted on it, and it's going to require some supervision. And I think as far as the aeration, Scott's quite qualified for that. And as far as the electrical and where those things go, I think Al's quite qualified for that. So, as an extra assignment, I'd like to put that on your plate.
Don, before you move on, the current situation, the current position we're in, though, is have we done an RFP, and do we have prices in so that we're ready to really begin?
Yes, we do.
We did, and we voted on it.
We have that, and I can share that with you. Okay. And that was voted on at the meeting, but I'll share the RFPs, the electrical, and the lakes. And one thing I want to mention in this project, they're going to be doing a lot of boring around the Veterans Gate because they have to tie into where we have electrical meters and breakers. There was some discussion with the electrician At that time, at the new Pine Island gate, we have electrical sockets for lighting Christmas lights and things that you might have for decorations. And Pine Island, they're going into the equipment and getting the electric from there. Is this something that we want to consider adding to that project? Yeah, to do that at Veterans. Pine Island has them already.
Right.
Did you want to explain that, what I'm talking about? Go ahead. Okay. And then there also was some discussion of getting power to the islands that are where the trees are, in case you ever wanted uplighting and things of that sort. You need to have 110 voltage in those areas. That would be something that while they're boring, we could consider them doing that, but that would require board action as to authorize funding for that. Probably would. But the electrician would get the permits that he needs.
My question was, since we discovered we have permitting issues at the Pine Island Road gate, would all this other boring and electrical installation require permits?
Without doubt. Without doubt.
Just a quick aside to that too. When we a few years ago, when we redid the veterans entrance landscaping wise, we looked at that project when we had that $50-some thousand to provide uplighting in the center island, which wasn't done because of monies that were allocated other places. But to remind the old board members and for the new board members, our PDP does show street lights on the veterans exit way that are on the PDP that are not installed. So one thing we might want to look at is when we're doing our punch list as Taylor Morrison exits, since it was required on the PDP, any additional lighting that they do either reimburse us for that or put that in. And once we are there at that veterans, that might lessen the cost of boring across to get that lighting or anywhere else. But again, maybe as capital projects, we can look at the PDPs and see where existing lights were supposed to be and were never installed.
But those are LEC lights.
Right, so we'll still need a 110 transformer to go down to the LED.
You can't take it from those lights.
You'll have to have a transformer.
No, it has to come from where our meter is, and our meter is in one of those islands where the major portion of the Veterans Gate, the high-rise part, and we would need to bore from there over to the island, so it's tied into our meter, not a street light.
LCEC will not
Correct, right. But I'm saying since they're boring for that street light, somebody is there to bore for that street light. Let's do the other boring.
Why not do our boring when we're doing our aeration, and then we're boring our own things?
Yeah, exactly. At any time, let's coordinate it so it's all done at the same time.
So should we ask for Jerry to get some costs of that to be added to the aeration project for establishment of receptacles at the Veterans Gate and boring for these islands?
Nothing at Trafalgar?
No. Do we want to make a motion to that effect?
I don't think we need to make a motion, just to
Okay,
have
all
a
right.
request of
You'll take care that.
information.
Okay, and then he'll come back with us, and then there'll be a motion whether to approve or disapprove. Okay.
Next item on the agenda is Pine Island Gate construction. Board President Don Wells requested this matter as well to be placed on the agenda. As some board members are aware, there was a proposal from Hunch Construction in the amount of $51,775 to reconstruct vehicular lanes on the north side and the south side of Pine Island Gate. The association signed off and approved that proposal, and work is due to begin within days. The question for discussion is whether or not the association should have agreed to pay for that up front with a plan to bill back Taylor Morrison, or if it should have required Taylor Morrison to pay for the cost directly.
I think that explains where we stand on this, and I open that for discussion to the board.
My opinion on that is that a demand letter should have been sent off to Taylor Morrison, giving them the opportunity to take care of that obligation themselves, and if they did not, then we proceed and go after them for the expense.
Further discussion?
If we are unwilling to fund it ourselves, that would create a delay in opening the Pine Island Road gate, correct?
It would stop in its tracks.
Okay.
Right now. Yeah, if we relied on them to pay for that gate anything to do with it right this minute, above what they have already started. It would completely shut down the project, and we would have that gate. They would close it and we would not be able to utilize that gate. The portion that we're going to have to pay for in advance, and then as Ron has suggested, we then send a demand letter, because it is part and parcel of what they have always said that they would do. That being said, we know that Taylor Morrison is very slow to do or try to renege on what they are required to do. So if we want to have that Pine Island gate operational within the next few weeks, we are going to have to pay for that up front and then get the demand letter to them and go after them on the tail end, not in the forefront. And it's a terrible situation to be in. We have been fighting with Taylor Morrison for months and months and months and months. So this is not something that's new to this board sitting here. It's something that has been ongoing, just like the lights that are in the S-curve of Anguilla, like several other things that Taylor Morrison has promised to do and has not done so. The lights at the entrance on Veterans, that's on the punch list also. The sidewalk around Ashbury. There is an extremely long list that's under the litigation piece now, and that's where part of this is where we stand now, where we're going after those things.
But Taylor Morrison has never had any control over the parcel north of the fence that we just obtained.
Right.
Taylor Morrison and over, I think half of the amount of money we're talking about involves narrowing that strip.
It does.
So that would not fall back on Taylor Morrison.
Well, they were to put in 2 gates to begin with, the 2 entrance gates. But they were to have the lines in both lanes coming in. It was up to them to negotiate all of this, and they neglected to do that.
Unfortunately, all those things were verbal, and they're not on paper. So,
but they couldn't do anything with city property.
Yeah.
They were never intending to.
the original plans at the Pine Island Gate had 1 entrance and 1 exit. In discussions with Tony Burdett and Taylor Morrison through the construction of that project, we were told it was going to match the Trafalgar Gate. And the minute that all the asphalt dried and we went out and looked, there was 1 entrance and 1 exit. And as I said, that was on the original plan, as the mayor stated at our meeting at the public hearing at City Council on Monday night. But since 2005, Pine Island became a dual highway. We've now built out to 1,425 homes, and Pine Island is a major ingress and egress for our community. And that's why we pressed them to create the situation that we would have 2 entrances and 1 exit at the Pine Island Gate to match Trafalgar. And if we finally got them to this point, it has not been a well-supervised project by any stretch, but we do have it with 2 gates coming in and 1 gate going out. Now, with all that being said, I just wanted to clear the air as to where the funding is coming from for this and where we stand right now, and do we want to delay the project, or do we want to get this thing done and then have the demand letter that Ron recommends with no guarantee you'll see anything from that?
But a point of clarification, what Al just said, what we're talking about here is, let's just say, east of the gate, this side of the gate, our side, which never was TM property. It was the city property, which now we took possession of. So then does TM have any liability and is the onus on them to pay for any of that improvement since it is now ours?
Well, if you're going to make a gate, you got to be able to get to it. So the argument that they're responsible is that if you've got 2 gates, you need 2 lanes. The purpose of having 2 lanes is so that you have residents not waiting behind vendors who are stopping at the kiosks.
I understand that.
But So it's a somatic thing, whether who's responsible. I mean, who's responsible to make the gate totally functional? You would think that the developer would do it and cover all bases, but that's not necessarily what's happening. And then on the inside, they were aware that there was a sharp curve for the residents, and they've done nothing to that. And the gate, when it was open, just a short period of time before we got all the gates up and all that, you know, there were people driving on the grass. They couldn't make that sharp turn. So it was proof that it was necessary to have the work done on the inside.
And I'm not denying that, and I want that gate open as soon as possible. I'm just wondering, and this may be a legal aspect, if we do a demand letter for something that we obviously know they're not encumbered to do, is it just a moot point and we should just move to get that, to pay for that and get that gate open so the residents have use to it?
That's exactly why it's on the agenda.
Right. And that's why I'm asking the question, because again, coming new into this, not knowing who was responsible for what portion as it evolved, let's get the gate open now and do what we need to do legally to, you know, get back some of the fees that we paid out. And that's what I'm just trying to find.
There was never anything in writing. There was always promises and always one group assuming one thing and one group assuming another. And we've reached a point of crisis at this point because Honk is coming on Monday, and I just want us to be in agreement that we're going to pay for it or not pay for it.
I'll just say that good faith is a guiding legal principle here, and I don't think anyone expects them to just write a check even after a demand letter. What I would say here is that it helps us to send a demand letter first and let them ignore it and then proceed. That being said, that doesn't limit us from seeking recourse on the back end. So what I can do is do my best to substantiate any claims that we have, and I really think that due to the safety issues, we've moved forward expeditiously.
Do we have a motion that we use the capital fund to pay for the improvements at Pine Island Gate at this juncture?
I so move.
Same thing.
Second.
We need the motion first.
I moved.
Second? Okay. Discussion at this point. Okay.
I truly think it's incumbent on us to get that gate open, whatever it takes, and then we'll let the dust settle and we'll figure it out later.
Okay, but I want everyone to know where we stand on this and where the funds are coming from and why. Okay, I will call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, we will be using the CenturyLink Capital Fund to fund the improvements at the Pine Island Gate, and we will attempt to seek reimbursement from Taylor Morrison.
Next order of business is CenturyLink account expenditures. Board Treasurer Bill Tubb requests this matter to be on the agenda. Bill will lead a discussion on recommended protocols for funding items from this account.
Currently, I think there's no particular accounting for that. It's a total, it's a balance. I would like for this board to instruct me to review or have reviewed all the inputs, all the incomes, and all the outflows from that account from inception to date, to make that report available to the homeowners and to begin to add an additional summary report page to our financial statements to detail any inflows and outflows by the month for the homeowners to see what went in and if anything came out, where it went.
I certainly would be willing to direct the treasurer to implement his suggestion post haste.
I would also like to add that I would like to add to that motion a requirement that any future expenditure from the CenturyLink account is in front of a noticed meeting in front of the community and requires a board vote.
And let's make the motion and get it all spelled out so that we all know what we're voting on.
The motion would be for prior to any expenditures of the CenturyLink account that it take place before a noticed meeting in front of the community and a board vote, and that we require a monthly budget, or excuse me, monthly expense report for the CenturyLink account, and we do a full expenditure accounting dating back to the inception.
So a notice meeting, your definition of that would be a monthly board meeting?
Or special.
Either one.
Correct.
As long as it's noticed, and this meeting today was notified 48 hours before, hopefully longer. Okay, we have a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have discussion? All in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your hand. Opposed? Okay, that motion carries, and any expenditure from the CenturyLink Capital Fund will be at a notice meeting in front of all board members and all residents.
Next item on the agenda is Trafalgar Gate operations, and Board President Don Wells requests this matter be placed on the agenda. Due to traffic issues on Trafalgar and Surfside, Don will lead a discussion on recommended policy regarding types of vehicular traffic restricted from entering through the Trafalgar Gate.
Just recently, within the past 2 weeks, one of the news teams was out filming the backups at Trafalgar Gate, and they then put on their nightly news. It is basically a favorable report because they contacted us and we told them that a fix was in the works. Now we need to follow through and do the fix. And I would like Al Roper to tell us the width of all the gates so that we're dealing with facts, so that when we make a recommendation, we'll know what's going to fit where.
You're lucky I was carrying this with me. All right. In the resident incoming lanes, the widest lane we have is at Trafalgar, 15.5 feet. The next widest is it's at Veterans, 14 foot, and our brand new gate at Pine Island is 13 foot 5 inches. The guest gate at Trafalgar is 14 and a half feet. The guest gate at Pine Island is 13 feet 5 inches again. Pretty small. And the guest gate at Veterans is 13 feet. The east exit gate at Veterans is 12 and a half, and the west exit gate at Veterans is 15 feet. At Trafalgar, the exit gate is 16 feet wide. That is the widest gate that we have. I believe it's also the gate that's hit the most. The exit gate at Pine Island is 15 and a half feet. And these were all measured with a tape measure.
The recommendation that has been made is that we make Trafalgar Gate a resident-only entrance. Because of the backup, if you have two vendors or a car with a trailer and another car, you're into the island, the circle, and traffic is blocked. The difficulty on the other that we have to recognize is that it requires a precision operator to get through the gates in the other two gates, so that there are not gate strikes. But it appears to me that that should be something that we could consider, and I open it to discussion.
Al, at one time, didn't you say that the way the gates on Pine Island are constructed, that you have an extra 3 inches if you brought the hinges in tighter? Am I correct in remember? Did I remember that correctly?
Yeah, the gate does stick out a little bit from the curb, but we're just talking 2 or 3 inches. That's not going to make a whole lot of difference.
No, I mean, maybe at every inch that we can get, if that's going to be one that we use for larger vehicles coming in, that may make a big difference. it's a straighter, once we cut off the curbing on the south side, it'll be a straighter.
Straightest approach we have.
Yeah,
Right.
where the others are going to come in somewhat at an angle. When you come in the Veterans Gate, you have to do a little curve, and that in and of itself presents a problem in bringing a wider vehicle through. My gut instinct would be to keep the larger vehicles at Pine Island. If we can get a couple, 3 more inches out of that, that would be great.
Yeah, I would think the best thing to do would be to probably limit large trucks and semis to the Pine Island gate. Like I mentioned before, I don't think the word commercial applies, because if I'm ordering a pizza from Cape Coral Parkway, I don't want my pizza to go up to Pine Island, and I live on Verdmont, to have that, the pizza travel all the way through Sandoval to get to my place. Same with an Uber, those could be considered commercial. So we have to designate, the size of the vehicle that we want to prohibit coming in at the Veterans Gate.
I think the issue I see there is enforcement. It's one thing to limit the Trafalgar to residents only. That can be done fairly easily through the systems we use to gain entry. But, if a resident's going to call for a furniture truck, for instance, to enforce which gate, because they can still get through them, it would be a little bit more difficult, if you will. I think we need to consider that.
I think, we've talked about this, Al and Don, we've talked about this. Having driven fire trucks for 25 years, I can tell you that the Trafalgar Gate was it was designed for what we'll call larger vehicles, because of the width as you measure it out. But now we're in a position where our traffic has increased there during school hours. It's definitely a safety issue. So we need to come up with a plan. And I see an inherent flaw with the veterans entrance, as Molly had just mentioned, is that when you come to the kiosk, if you're going to that other side, there's no way that a vehicle of larger can get in, make that swing, and get in. That's why that gate has had so many hits there, because number one, they choose to not read the sign that says no trucks. So again, like Jerry said, it's an enforcement thing, and how do we enforce it? I think the best way, and unfortunately, we need to look at number one, first and foremost, is safety accessibility for larger fire trucks, aerial apparatus, things like that. And again, Trafalgar is the widest, coming in at 15.5, but it's not the safest. So we're left with veterans, which is tricky to get around that turn, might delay the response time. So then we're left with Pine Island with that straight shot, as you guys have tried to design. So I would defer in my expertise of driving larger vehicles and say that for emergency vehicles, Pine Island's probably going to be the one, or articulated tractor trailers, things over a certain amount. But then we do, how do we police veterans? So my suggestion would be just Trafalgar and veterans, residential only. Your pizza guy, he doesn't have commercial tags on it. He's probably going to be in a car. So I think that would not be an issue. But the moment we get into box vans and things like that, they're not your best drivers around, and we're going to see that gate getting hit. So.
Okay, so what would you do with a resident that has a boat? He's coming in. He's got a headlight sticker. He's pulling a boat, or a landscaper that's pulling a trailer.
I believe.
Are you going to make everybody go to
Well,
Pine Island? Or?
I believe the sign says no trucks or trailers at veterans right now.
That went down when the gates went down and they were dark for 2-3 months. The new no trucks sign was never put back on the gate.
It's farther back. It's actually there. It's on the side of the road farther back. I know, but it is there, but it's not on the gate. And I know it used to be on the gate, but it was pretty unsightly too. So, one thing I would like to mention is I think if you have an emergency vehicle, they have a well horn and they'll open any gate.
Yeah, they will.
So if we, and we're not
talking about emergency.
No. Well, I'm just making the statement that emergency vehicles have access to all gates.
Yeah. I think we're going to have. I think the question comes down to how we designate which size truck has to use a specific gate.
Again, I think we're looking at sizes. I think we need to look at resident versus everybody else. To Scott's point, I'm not suggesting this is the answer, but it would be manageable if we just had guests come through Pine Island and just use veterans and Trafalgar as resident only. That would be manageable. But different sizes of vehicles and different gates, I just don't see how that would be manageable.
I think residents could and guests could come through the Veterans Gate because they have a kiosk. If we establish Trafalgar as residents only, we then take the kiosk away and we save kiosk costs instead of having 3 gates that were charged for kiosks. And then we then determine what we're going to do at the other 2 gates. But I think guests of residents should be able to come either way. Now, just for discussion for tonight, would you be opposed to us tabling how we're going to do the trucks? It's not going to be at Trafalgar, and have a consensus that Trafalgar will be made a residence gate only. Could we have a motion to that effect?
I so move.
Any discussion of making Trafalgar a residence-only gate as soon as we get Pine Island open and in a reasonable period of time afterwards? Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, going forward, we're going to make Trafalgar a residence-only gate. Guests and guests and residents will be at either gate, and we're going to determine about the vendors and the trucks.
Okay, and that will be after we've opened the Pine Island gate.
Right. And we're not doing it now. And we'll be able to notify the news that we've solved their problem.
The next order of business is conflict of interest policy. Board member Scott DeFilippis requested this matter to be placed on the agenda. Scott will lead a discussion on the need of a conflict of interest policy.
Thank you, Jerry. Rest of the board members have before them in the packet just a sample of a conflict of interest policy, which was I've been trying to get this probably for 3 or 4 years now and have presented it many times because when we're dealing with vendors, committee members, and board members, it's extremely important that we, every transaction that is done is at an arm's length transaction without any air of impropriety. And I've never been a member of a board or a committee or an elected position where I have not had to fill out a conflict of interest policy. So, and the genesis behind this is just to, once again, any air of improprieties that may arise, we will be insulated from this, and everything should be at an arm's length transaction. And it's pretty clear, the language, if your brother-in-law or someone owns a car dealership or a gator dealership and we're buying gators from him, and you're on a committee and we don't go out for an RFP or anything like that, it's covered in here. Or any other areas where a family member may benefit from you being on a board or a committee, it's delineated. You have to sign for it. So I think, the days of just doing things the way they were are coming to an end in a lot of areas. I think this is going to bring us forward into getting in a line with basically standard procedures that most places deal with.
I think it's certainly an item that we need to discuss and look favorably upon. Does anyone have questions about what what Scott's requesting?
Yeah. I don't know that the document that you played that we all just saw for the first time when we sat down, and I've read page 1, I've not read all the rest of it. So by not having this ahead of time to digest, I think that we should ask Jerry to.
He says that he would like to task our general manager with providing a board a draft for consideration at our April meeting.
Yeah, that's where I'm going. You see, well, now it's a matter that we need to bring in is the expertise of Jerry because he's done this type of thing before. It's a very valid point, but we need to, as I said, I've not read this yet. We may come up with some more ideas that we even want to have in this, and Jerry certainly would have far better back knowledge, having done this in other communities. So I guess the motion would really need to be to task Jerry to do.
We were going to refer this consideration of this to our April meeting as per your request. At that time, we will have a draft policy, and we can vote. We'll be expecting to have a vote on this in April.
I think the motion would be to postpone this action to the April 21st meeting.
Is there a motion to that effect? Motion. Second? Discussion? All in favor of referring this to April? Aye.
Next order of business is solicitation of additional agenda items.
We have two items that I want to bring up at this point, and I will refer the floor to Al Roper.
Probably a couple months ago, I was approached by a microphone that worked.
It did. It was on. It's on.
A couple months ago, I was approached by a couple residents that represented the people at the Happy Paws Dog Park. They were a little upset with the condition of the dog park. They were concerned that there wasn't enough seating there. A lot of residents were bringing their own chairs, and then, of course, they weren't their top quality chairs. They were leaving them there forever. Looked kind of unsightly. Another situation that they were very concerned about, as I am concerned about, is the lack of parking there. People are parking all over. At times, there's 8 to 10 cars parked on the south end of that dog park, and then all on the side of the road there. It's you know, it isn't if, it's when some dog's going to bolt out of someone's car and get run over. Especially once we open that Pine Island gate, that's going to be a pretty busy thoroughfare. I told these people that we were looking seriously at putting a parking lot in there. We're still working on that, but I also told them that we could certainly come up with some benches, and that's what I'm proposing here. We can get benches similar to the ones that are along the Esplanade, the green recycled plastic benches. They cost around $500 each, and it costs around $100 to get them trucked in here. So I'd like to purchase 5 of these benches, 4 of them to go in that dog park, 1 to go in the South Dog Park.
Al, what company do you find to be the best? So there's a variation of about $1,000 here price-wise.
Well, I think the benches are basically the same. The heavy-duty bench is the one that weighs 178 pounds. There are 3 different prices. All these prices are for 5 benches, and it includes tax and shipping where it's applicable. It looks like the Belson company there has the lowest price. And then if we would rather go with the economy, which I wouldn't recommend, it looks like it's a lot lighter weight. You know, for $500, we might as well get the bench that's going to be around for a few years.
Al, do we know what benches we currently have around the Esplanade?
Taylor Morrison purchased those. I had sent this same information to Taylor Morrison, and I told them to you know, because they had, there were several lakes that didn't have benches up in Phase 3, and Don and I, when we were doing our inspections, we noticed that. So we got them to pour, we got Taylor Morrison to pour those pads, and also purchase, I think they bought 4 or 5 benches at that time. But some of those are the lighter benches. I would much rather go with a heavier duty bench, you know, for a few $100s. It's
Just
well
the reason
worth
that
it.
I was asking also too is if we have a parts issue, let's just say, an interchangeability between, so we're not having to source different parts for different benches, trying to get similar things where if a slat goes bad or something, we can replace that with like kind, and we don't have to shop around for different manufacturers, different benches. That's all I was trying to.
Well, I've tipped the benches upside down, you know, trying to glean a name or a number off them or something, and I've been unsuccessful.
I would like to make a motion that we accept the bid from Belson for $2,581.99 for 5 benches, 4 of which to be in the Phase 3 dog park and 1 to be in the Phase 1 dog park.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Just one quick one. The reason for one at the other park, is there other benches there, or is?
I believe there are 2 benches down there. There might be 3.
Okay.
But you know, and there's a couple up at the North Dog Park too. But it's the North Dog Park is definitely short of seating.
Any other discussion? My question is, if you add 1 bench to the dog park in the north, and we add 4 benches to the dog park at Happy Paws, are each park adequately fitted with benches?
That was my question.
I think that yes, please. The dog park at Phase 3, I believe, is a much larger one. There's usually about 25 to 30 people every afternoon at approximately the same time.
I've never been approached by anyone from the South Dog Park requesting more seating.
Okay, so again, this is a board discussion here, and I'm hearing what the comments are out there. So basically what I would say too is this doesn't preclude us from adding extra benches if we need to in the future to see if there isn't sufficient seating in either of the dog parks.
You know,
right?
if I buy 8, I might get a better price. You know, I mean,
what is our tolerance for cost on benches?
Yeah.
Well, you know, seriously though, I think that the tolerance is there like we talked about before, wants and needs? Okay, is there a need for additional benches? And we've obviously identified a need, and the need is we need them at the Happy Paws. And again, is there a need at the Calypso Park Dog Park? And obviously there's a need because you said we're going to do 1, and that's why I asked the total, because.
Yeah.
My question,
I know that there was
are there chairs from that are left at the Calypso Park like they're left at the Happy Paws? Okay, I'm going to go out of order here, and I'm going to allow the residents to come up and speak for 30 seconds each with their opinion of the benches.
Point of order. I think you can hear me. I have a dog.
No, have to use a mic. Have to use a mic or you can't talk.
It's up there. It's on there.
These people at home want to hear you.
Why do they turn it off every time? There you go. I go to the dog park a lot, and if you get benches that you can't move, that's really wrong, because when you sit in the same place, the grass dies because the dogs are. Anyway, if you have a heavy bench that you can't move, you can have a lot of mud around every one of them. And then we like to sit in chairs because we like the human contact of each other. Besides having dogs that are playing, the adults are speaking, and it's very, very, very relaxing. It's very nice, and exercise for the dogs and stimulation for the. Oh, okay. So we have a good time down there. I'm not there all the time, but when I come, everybody knows each other's name. You can't have benches because you'd be sitting in benches. How would you have the benches? How would you move the benches so the grass doesn't die? We keep moving the chairs around to different areas because the grass dies. If you
Then maybe you need to take the chairs home every day instead of leaving them there.
Why is it? Why would you care?
How about the course?
Because it has been a resident complaint that there are these ugly benches, these ugly chairs laying in the dog park, and
How many residents
it's
complained?
unsightly.
You said it's a resident complaint. So we're going to change everything for one resident?
I
How
didn't
many
say it
residents?
was one resident.
Okay, how many?
Okay, let's next person, please.
While we're waiting, is
Valuable
there anything
lesson.
in this motion that means that said we have to remove those chairs? We're just adding benches so the chairs could.
They don't have to sit on them if they don't want to.
But I mean, the chairs that are there could stay too if we add the benches, couldn't they? If
To me,
okay.
The point is that the chairs are not aesthetic for the dog park.
Yes, Al, you said nobody's approached you. We approached Sean for the need for more seating in Calypso Park many, many times. So it has been approached. I'm sorry we didn't approach you because we didn't know anything was going on. But I find it very unfair. Yes, there's a lot of people that go to Barclay, Paws Park, whatever its name is. But there's just as many that goes to the front park, and that's why we needed chairs, because there are people who couldn't stand. So I find it very unfair to put 5 in the back park and 1 in the front park. Why can't it?
No one has requested any.
I just said we didn't know you were in the process of asking for requests. We have requested them before. If we knew you were doing something about it right now.
Did you want benches or chairs?
Anything to sit on. A bench, I don't care what I sit on. But there's a need for more seating in the front park. And
How
one
many
bench.
benches are there? Is there 2 or
There's
3
2.
there?
There's 2 far apart, and one in
way
the
up
small
on the
one.
north end and one on the south end? Is that what there is
That's
there
it.
now?
That's it. One. Yeah, one in the small.
Okay,
but
so
nobody uses it.
I would like to regain control here just a moment and recommend that we postpone this this vote to our April meeting so that we can do more research and determine what would be a proper way to address the issue. Do I have someone to make the motion and second?
I'll make a motion. So moved.
Bill, you are amending the motion to delay action until next month. Because we already had we moved and Al seconded to purchase the 5. So now we have to have an amendment.
We did. We didn't vote on the other motion. We're going to postpone that motion until the April meeting would be the motion. Amend to postpone. Okay, and second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? All in favor of postponing the discussion on the benches until April, signify by raising your hand. Thank you. Oh, do you want to vote? Did you vote?
You can say opposed.
Oh, opposed. Okay, thank you.
Gotta tell the people in the north dog park they're being penalized by the people in the south park.
He was saying that he's going to have to tell the people that wanted the benches that they're going to have to wait. Okay, now one more item that we wanted to add, and I would like Vic to come up and explain. Everyone wants to hear every single thing that we say, and we've had difficulty getting that audio portion of our meeting out. We're doing fairly well with video, and Vic has a recommendation that he wants to present to the board.
Thank you, Don. I was requested by Molly last month for the Communications Committee to provide a proposal for a new sound system, at least for the microphones, for the board members. As we found out tonight, each board member should have a microphone instead of passing it along. That was number 1. Number 2, we have equipment in service now of different manufacturers, different types, and it's showing its age over the past 4 or 5 years. And I think there's a recommendation by myself and by the Communications Committee to replace it with something newer that will last for another 4 years and provide decent service. not only is the sound system, first of all, providing what we can hear here in the auditorium, but also to the audience in the YouTube channel, which makes a big difference of the quality of what anyone is saying. So with that said, I gave a proposal to the chairman, who then in turn gave it to the board, for 8 new microphones for each board member and also for Jerry, which totaled a cost of $2,800. That cost are the same type, so everybody had equal amounts of the types that the overhead type of headset. Number one. Number two, we also provide a microphone for this podium, separate in itself. The outputs of each of these microphones would go into a mixer board. Since each individual board member speaks of different volume, different quality, that soundboard would then control that level and also the quality of the sound to a common channel, which would then be fed to the public address system and also to the YouTube channel. So with that said, that was a $2,800 cost. And since then, we had a problem with the common microphone that we use here in the room for the sound system that I guess showed its age too, which needs to be replaced. So that's an additional $300 on top of the $2,800. So we're looking at $3,100 for a total.
How would a board member who is not present be able to hear the meeting and we hear them, what they have to say? Is there something we could add that would do that?
That was proposed, and there's an option for a Polycom system where they can dial in, and the audio out of that phone system can then be tied into our mixer. The mixer would then be not only to the room, but also to anybody watching on YouTube.
What is the cost of that piece of equipment?
That is about $150.
Okay.
We're looking for something that could be used, something off of eBay that will still provide the service, because for the amount of times that will be used, I don't think a brand new one can justify the cost.
Can you explain the difference between the two proposals that you have on the sheet?
The two proposals were, number one, there were individual items of an individual headset for a transmitter and receiver, where the second one was a common receiver taking all 8 microphone inputs into one common output. Basically, we're going to try, with the second proposal, I was trying to eliminate the need for extra equipment to take care of or handle around, and probably easier to hook up. However, there's more flexibility on the first proposal.
Yeah,
Can you go ahead and explain option 2?
Do I have that too?
As you did option 1?
Mm-hmm. Option 2 is a single receiver unit. Still, each member has a microphone for their own purpose on a stand. And there's also another mixer involved, which is common to 1 and 2. And the wiring in between the mixer and the computer.
And that total for option 2 is $1,240.
Correct.
And that is the one you're recommending?
I'm recommending that only because I'm kind of looking at both the point of how many times are we using this system for this room. Is it necessary that we use the more expensive one for once a month? We might be. I'm not sure. Second of all, the other one where if the receiver goes, we're kind of in the water where we have no sound system here in the room or in.
If we selected option 2 and we wanted to upgrade later, what would that cost be? Is it possible?
Then it's going back to square one and probably providing a new quotation.
Victor, my question would also be, I'm taking into consideration at some point in time when we do clubhouse expansion, instead of just a speaker on the floor, we may have some speakers in the ceiling or some mounted in some other configuration. Mm-hmm. Will either of these systems adapt to that or be better utilized with maybe an in-house system instead of portable?
You could use both systems for the new proposed building, which is fine. Again, these devices are an analog system. Analog will be around for a while. Everybody's moving to digital, which is allegedly a cleaner sound. But for our purposes, the analog, which is a little cheaper, obviously, than digital, will suffice.
So, Vic, what I've understood from you is that for option number one, for $2,800 plus approximately $150, a total of $3,100 for the microphone systems and $150 for the cell phone additional one.
Right.
Is the better sound? We would have a little better equipment. It would be easier for the operators to work with. We would be saving about $1,000, but you kind of get what you pay for.
Correct, correct. I mean, the system that I propose is the system you're using right now with the headset, and there's no dropout. It's constant whether you turn your head left or right. This evening, Don had a couple of issues where you start moving around the microphone and you're losing that. And you're not getting every word that he says, which is rather important at a board meeting.
Yeah, I've used this before on the Villa board meetings, and it has worked very, very well. It's comfortable. It's easy to use. You're not having to keep picking up and putting down, picking up and putting down.
Correct. Or turning off and turning on, which...
Yeah, you can have a little switch right here that you can turn off and on.
Correct.
And it would be for all 8 of us, GM
Correct.
and 7 board members.
Correct.
Thank you, Vic.
You're
I
welcome.
have a question for the treasurer. If we approve one of these systems, where would the funds come from? You know what the budget is. You know what the cost is. We need advice.
I would defer to the general managers.
I would recommend us fund it out of the capital.
I concur with that.
Do we have any motion and then a second and then a discussion?
I move that we purchase the first option not to exceed $4,000 in case there's something that we have missed in this. Hopefully it will stay at the lower price, but not to exceed $4,000. And fund it out of the capital.
Do we have a second? Second. Do we have discussion?
Call the question.
Okay, then I would like to ask that we then vote on the motion to purchase the $2,800 plus the additional 2 items, including the microphone for the building as a whole and the cell phone option, so that absent board members will be able to participate in the meeting at no more than $4,000.
Aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is we need a motion to adjourn to the open forum resident comment section.
I just would say that motion passed.
I just have one point of order question for the chair. This week I've had numerous emails and or phone calls with resident concerns. How do you want to handle that? Do you want to just bring that up now, or do we want to put it as agenda items for next month? I don't know if waiting till next month is going to address some of their concerns that might be of immediacy.
Right, so the question I would have, I don't know, without knowing what the questions are, why would it not have been appropriate to give them to me at the time you received them so I could go ahead and work them then?
The majority of them probably within the last day or two.
Oh, okay.
So that was my question, is to, of course, absolutely, as the conflict of interest policy was, but that's why it was just a point of order type of thing.
Yeah, I think the appropriate thing would be to make the general manager aware as soon as you get them. And then, because if we spend time here, we will prolong the meeting. Not that we're avoiding the questions, but we want to address the question as quickly as possible.
I agree.
I just have one last thing. In our meeting with our attorney this week, he's offered to come and speak to the community about electronic voting. So as an agenda item for the next board meeting, I would like to discuss scheduling a workshop with our attorney so he can explain the pros and cons of electronic voting and answer all the residents' questions.
I think that's a good point, and we certainly want to take that into consideration, and we will. I'm going to alter the agenda to ask any board member that they have any other comments that they would like to add before we adjourn. Bill? Scott?
No, sir.
Molly?
I'm good.
Al? Jerry? I'm good. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? To the open forum.
I so move.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Okay, and it does not require a vote, so the meeting is declared adjourned, and we are now open for resident comments on any topic.
And there is one person that signed up to speak, Thomas Robertson.
I got about 6 different questions, probably.
One at a time, and someone else can tell theirs.
I was saying as I walked up, I have about 6 different questions. I guess my first question is where are we with Mr. Darby? Are we paying him? Is he doing something for us? What is going on with his status? Because obviously there's been no report from him for the last several meetings.
I can answer that question. We have set up a committee on the clubhouse expansion, and one of their first tasks will be to make contact with Mr. Darby so that we will know that answer.
Are we still paying him in any fashion?
That will be determined when we get information and talk with him. Okay. Next question.
Okay.
Only one at a time. Next, any other resident with a question? One at a time.
I asked one. Are
You
you ready
asked
for my
once.
next one?
No. Then we'll get back to you, Tom. We'll give everybody a chance to ask one.
How you doing, board? I just got a quick question. You guys have mentioned a few times tonight that most of the stuff has been verbal. There's nothing been documented. I brought it to a few of your attentions. I also made a post on the forum asking if anybody's gotten a hold of or gone through Sean Wilson's desktop. I made a post regarding the OST file, the PST file, in terms of getting that data and getting it up on the cloud, because it is important, to separate that. It is association property, and if we say at some point separate ourselves from Pope properties, we would want that data backed up in the cloud with a copy, just in case of corruption. I think that's very important, especially as data, because that desktop contains a wealth of knowledge, okay, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I was wondering if anybody has started to go through that desktop. Is anybody backing it up? Archiving the emails. I'm just curious from that standpoint. I did make a post on the forum January 5th, so it's a sore spot for me, so I'm just curious. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So yes, we do have the emails archived. I have access to them, and I am in a process of going through everything that's on the computer and everything hard copy that's in the office. And I think someone mentioned tonight something about indexing. I forgot who that was, but I think it was Scott or Bill. So that's an ongoing task, and what you said will be included in Bill's task as far as indexing. Thank you.
Better show you how to use it and ask your question.
I'm disappointed of the board tonight on the decision of the gate. Hunch is not going to be done for 2 or 3 weeks. 2 for sure. You could have sent from Hunch to Taylor Morrison a bill for $51,000. In 2 weeks, they would answer that. No, you go ahead and spend our money, and there's more than 51,000. I know another 7,000. So I'm not happy that you did that, and I understand. Since last June, we've been screwing around with that gate, and we can't go backwards. We got to go forward. I understand Molly's frustrated. I understand everybody. I've been involved since November, and it's disgraceful what we done. I'm sorry, but I'm not happy with what you did.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, my name is Joanne Brown, and I'd like to recommend that anybody that comes up here tells us their name first, because we don't know everybody, and that way you'll know who's talking. Okay. Also, I'd like to know that if a question is asked here, will we get an answer while we're still standing here? I think that's important.
Yes, if we have the answer, we will provide you the answer.
Okay, and if not, you'll follow up with that.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, also, it was minor, but when you mentioned the nice signs that have now been placed at the entrance about the fine and everything, somebody brought up, I don't even know who did it, but the nice little pineapples that we had on our gate system and a welcome home sign that used to be here, those are no longer around. Somebody brought that up on Facebook. Is that true? Those things are not there anymore? Yeah. Can we have them replaced if they're within reason as far as expense?
I'm not sure if Bob has the pineapples. However, my understanding is the welcome home sign was a Taylor Morrison advertising sign.
Oh.
So I don't know whether it's back here. We can look for it. But
I just thought it was a nice little
I believe
touch.
it was Taylor Morrison's property.
Oh.
And just a point of information, the pineapples that we have are laser cut. I believe the ones on the monuments, when I last spoke to our previous GM, I think the monument pineapples are about $90 because they're laser cut. So the ones on the gates that aren't there, I don't know since that last gate hit where they are, but they're not an item that's readily available. We have to go back to whoever laser cuts them out of steel and replace them if so. So it's an item that is not a off-the-shelf item.
Okay, and then also somebody else brought it up, but then when I'm driving around, I see it. The cleaning of the different monuments and the entrance coming into the community. Some of those areas need to be cleaned or pressure cleaned or however go about cleaning them. Okay?
Thank you. I'll take care of that.
Okay, thanks.
Charlie Kaufman. I live in Phase 3 on Vareo. I don't know whether this is something that's tied up in litigation with Taylor Morrison or not, or if they are committed to doing it. But what about paving, finishing paving the streets in Phase 3 and part of Sandoval Parkway, which goes all the way to Marival? What's the status of that?
We're talking about the overlay, right?
The top coat.
So
Yes.
I talked with Taylor Morrison on that last week, and I did not get an answer from him, but I feel through the body language and some of the things he said, it's imminent, and I should hear from him next week. So we're hoping, within months.
I'll just mention another item of concern to me, all the potholes that are in the current roadway, and if they don't come and do it, we either have to get them to come fill the potholes or we're going to have to do it ourselves.
I'll give an update to that and the general manager's update. That's a great one. Thank you.
Bob Higgs. I'm wondering if there's a third pile of where we're putting items that we want to debate with Taylor Morrison. You have to have another pile that has some writing behind it. I mean, is this whole thing done, verbally? This is crazy.
Third pile, I just want to make sure I understand. So far, we've proceeded on deficit funding claims and also a 558, which basically means that it was a defective build. So, but that hasn't focused necessarily on Phase 3. So I want to make sure that I understand your question. Are you referring to whether how we substantiate the Phase 1 and 2 558 claims, or
what are we going to use for guidelines? We didn't have ceilings on anything, and then Molly said, "Well, $4,000 on the item we just did." How much are we going to? Is there a ceiling on what we're going to spend to decide whether or not it's worth suing Taylor Morrison?
Absolutely. A risk-reward analysis is the first step generally. And that's why we're looking at what the fees we've paid to date and any expectation going forward. But that is first and foremost our analysis, and that's what's being undertaken right now going forward. And as far as substantiating the claims, we are still looking at phase 3 because that has not been completed yet. I hope that answers your question. If not, I can...
But phase 3 should be different because that should all be in writing because that was theirs, right?
Well, there's a variety of areas we can rely on. We can rely on the design submitted to the city, the purchase agreement between Bonita Bay and Taylor Morrison. There are a number of documents to substantiate it. Personally, going forward, what I would prefer to do on the phase 3 transition is to have a consultant come in and do a full analysis of what the remediation would require and the cost, and we have a nice, tight, sealed document that we can explain to everybody exactly where we stand on these items, and then what our demand will be and what our expectations are. That's the way I believe it should be done.
I hear you, that's good, but how much are we going to spend to get this knowledge?
Well, fortunately, most of the knowledge is readily available for us. It's whether we go and create an expenditure to put this into a consultant report. And frankly, I don't have an estimate for you right now, but it's a good question, and it's actually one of the topics we discussed this past week. So hopefully we'll have some more information going forward when we do an analysis of the phase 3 claims.
Okay.
And I wish I could give you...
Thank you.
I have another question.
One question at a time.
Well, that lady certainly asked more than one.
Okay, one question at a time.
You can stay.
I didn't know you were there.
Hi. I'm in the wrong place. I'm in the wrong place. Sorry about that. Lisa Woodland, live over in Somerville. With being right there next to the Veterans Gate, we do see trucks coming in. So the question is, does the people with Envera see who sticks their driver's license in that they are a truck driver or just a resident, and why do they constantly let them in? And I'm supposed to be now like a 10-year-old little snitch and call the office when I see something, or just leave it? What's the procedure? What?
Yeah, the procedure would be to call the office, and I would take care of it from there.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone who has not spoken that has a question? Steve.
Steve Putnam, Varel Court, and my question is, I believe we put Florida Evergreen on the payroll as of March 1st to begin taking care of the lawns that are done by the HOA, and I would like to ask that we get them into Sandoval and have a resident meeting, because nobody seems to have a clue what's expected of them or when, and everybody up there is wanting to know if and when we'll ever get our shrubs trimmed.
So they are here every week on Tuesday from 10 to 12, and I'm happy to. I think we already did put that message out once when I introduced the company, and I'm happy to do it again if you think that would help. But there is help available, and they're specifically here, the field tech and the foreman, here to answer exactly those type of questions. We also have Allison Johnson, right, who is here tonight, and she is works kind of as a liaison between homeowners with issues and the company. So I think your two opportunities, and you can either contact myself, Allison Johnson, or come here Tuesday between 10 and 12 to get those answers.
Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome.
With 200 emails a day, I'm not sending you one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other residents who have not spoken with a question? Okay, I'm going to allow the two that had multiple questions, one, their most important question, and then we're going to adjourn.
First, I'll take a stab at answering a question. For the lawn care, they have been doing, they did Hopefield, they've done the Greendale Woodbourne section, and he's getting around to each one as possible. I spoke to Matt personally, and he says try to give him to like tax day, April 15th, to try to get everything in shape. And then, of course, you're definitely welcome to come on a Tuesday meeting. I heard it mentioned, and I think I got the numbers correct, 558. Is that in effect yet?
For phase 1 and phase 2, not phase 3.
So the 558 is in effect?
It's a construction defect claim. So if they build something that is defective, you bring a 558 motion, essentially. And what happens is it tolls any statute of limitations, number one. And number two, it sets a period of time in which you can negotiate the resolution of the claims in a non-litigation setting. But presently, we have the notice already sent out. I believe it was on October 15th of 2018 for phase 1 and phase 2. And we're waiting for completion of their obligations under phase 3 to do an analysis.
Isn't there a statute of days once that's put into effect of like 60 days?
75 days.
75 days. So if you're talking October or March, it should be completed?
Well, their response was that it was, they wanted it, the notice substantiated. So they basically claimed that it was insufficient in terms of the notice of the claims, but that is expected. It's just essentially a procedural response, and that's one of the things we're looking at right now from a risk-reward standpoint.
So has it been substantiated? I guess the question is, so do we know when the clock starts?
Well, the clock has started, and in my opinion, that it was just a no response from them. And so there's no obligation to substantiate anything under the statute. We just make a decision now whether we proceed with litigation or not. And that is a very important decision because it involves money that could go for us or against us. So the risk-reward analysis was really something that I've looked very closely at, looked at how much we've expended to date, and we are working jointly to determine the best path forward.
Thank you.
Bob. It's a question that's bothered me for years, and I've discussed it with you, Don. Earlier tonight, and I think it was you, Jerry, mentioned something about, gave me the impression that we could check our insurances and possibly see if we're covered for certain things. I find it disturbing that our treasurer's never been bonded. Nobody on the board has ever been questioned by the insurance company. How would the insurance company know whether they're going to back your play if they don't even know your name?
So we have fidelity coverage that would cover that, you know, the option or bonds, but we have a fidelity policy that protects the HOA against that type of misuse of funds, for instance. So I'm not sure what you're alluding to.
Does it also protect the homeowners?
Oh, absolutely. It protects the association is what it does, which is the homeowners, your money in our funds from a fidelity standpoint. So I don't know what you're alluding to. I didn't speak on insurance tonight, so perhaps someone else did, and I'm missing one of your points. Did I answer your question? And if not,
you did. You said we're covered.
With a fidelity policy.
Why has nobody ever been able to answer that question before?
I can't explain it, but if you would shoot me an email, I'll send you a deck page of every policy we have so you can see those coverages. We're with a broker that, you know, has been with us since inception and has been very involved in the community and is very familiar, you know, with our needs through the different, you know, the developer, first board, second board, et cetera. And, you know, analysis have been done on those coverages, and we feel very comfortable where we're at. Actually, next week, I think it's next week or the week after, I can't remember the date, the insurance broker is due to come out and meet with the new board and go over all of our coverages as well as any outstanding, we have a couple of outstanding claims. in litigation. So, and perhaps after that meeting, I'll include that in my report to give you an idea of.
Not a public meeting.
No, it's executive session because we have 2 matters in litigation, and that is why it's covered under executive session. But again, I'll be happy to send an email out afterwards, in explaining as best I can without violating that executive session privacy. Thank you.
Well, I thank you all for your patience and tolerance for 2.5 hours, and I declare the resident comment section also closed. Thank you again for coming.